We're like, what, 2 or 3 days away from Bears Packers. It's always been exciting. The trash talk's been in full effect this week on both Bears Twitter and Packers Twitter. It's interesting because Packers Bob, if you follow me on Twitter, Packers Bob added me to a list about to see a loss this weekend. Our buddy is back from his like 2 or 3 month hiatus because he just absolutely fell off in the summer. Well, first emerged around training camp, then fell off, and now is back just in time for Bears Packers. But what's up, guys? Welcome to the Fireside Bears YouTube channel. Usayd Culture and Max Smith here. Make sure you're following us on Twitter at Usayd Culture and at Max Smith. But then go ahead and follow Fireside Bears on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram at Fireside Bears. Max, it's been what, 48 or 72 hours since we last recorded. Any luck with getting on Bob's list?
No, unfortunately not. I'm going to go ahead and put up that tweet on this video for those of you who are unaware. He's a really interesting guy. Nobody knows anything about him, but he's one of the most vocal Packers fans on Twitter. So shout out Packers Bob if you're watching this, probably not. But it is Bears Packers week, the first of two this year, every year. But Justin Fields first. We have the fortunate distinction of hosting the first round this year at Soldier Field. And then the second round will be in the freezing cold of Lambeau Field towards the end of the year. But there's a lot to talk about this game, not just because it's Packers-Bears, but because after a win against the Raiders, the Bears are primed in a position to kind of take a hold of the NFC North and maybe put themselves in a spot for a pretty good playoff position. So there's a lot at stake for season ramifications during this game. This is also a big moment for Justin Fields and our rookie running back. I guess it's a new rookie dynamic duo between the quarterback and running back, Justin Fields and Khalil Herbert. But let's start with you. What specifically or what storylines are you really interested in looking at as the Bears host the Packers this weekend?
Well, let me start by saying this. I mean, the McCaskey family's always used these Bears Packers games as a way to go ahead and evaluate where the Bears are at compared to the Packers. Because I understand, and you could argue this right now, the Bears are the more storied franchise between the two franchises. But the last 2 to 3 decades, the Packers have had the Bears number. And if you don't admit that, well, then you're just a giant Bears homer at this point. And we're Bears fans, analysts, writers, and podcasters here at Fireside Bears, but the Packers have had the Bears number, okay, over the last like 3 decades from Aaron Rodgers, well, Brett Favre to Aaron Rodgers. But I think that this is a significant game because it is number one, we have to keep something in mind. Matt Nagy's only beaten the Packers one time in the last 3 seasons, basically. All right. The other 2 times was 2019 and 2020. Bears lost in both of those games. The only win was in 2018 to capture the NFC North Championship, which is ironically also the Bears' second win against Green Bay since 2015. So a lot going on here. Now, the reason I bring that up is because there's a lot of storylines to look at, right? So, we're talking about Justin Fields getting his feet wet in this rivalry. We're talking about this possibly being the last time we see Aaron Rodgers at Soldier Field in a Packers uniform. All right. So, Aaron Rodgers, this could be the final 2 games for him. And then you're looking at Matt Nagy. Hey, can you right the ship? Can you reverse this curse? Can you get your first victory against Green Bay since 2018 as a head coach of the Bears? Can you do that? I mean, Aaron Rodgers, and I watched the Green Bay presser, and I know someone kind of called it a backhanded compliment because he sort of laughed afterwards, but I think it was a legitimate compliment. All right. Rodgers basically complimented the Bears defense, saying, yeah, they've got Khalil Mack and Robert Quinn, some of the best players in the league. Keem Hicks, when healthy, is as disruptive as he can be. He specifically highlighted 2 things: Roquan Smith, and about how Roquan Smith always had a chance to be the best Bears, or the one of the best linebackers in the NFL since he entered the league, and how Roquan Smith has just continued to emerge. That right there signals that when a future Hall of Fame quarterback is seeing a young player grow right before your eyes, that means that Roquan Smith has made more strides than people can even imagine. And that means that he just has the respect of one of the best talents in the NFL. And then Rodgers basically talks about the Bears secondary. Sure, there's some younger players, but also at the end of the day, keep in mind that this secondary's played a bit better than a lot of people have expected. So I'm basically watching for Aaron Rodgers' final game against the Bears because there's so much that goes into it.
Yeah, absolutely. If you didn't get a chance as Bears fans to watch Aaron Rodgers' presser yesterday, it was stunning. He had nothing but nice things to say about Chicago, the city, the team. It was really weird. Definitely sounded like he knows that this is his last year. He's been saying this the entire time. He was on Pat McAfee where he had those comments about the Bears defense, and he was talking about the game coming up and how much he respects the rivalry between the two teams. And Aaron Rodgers is a class act. Honestly, I think so at this point. It's really hard to dislike him now. It's really easy to dislike the Packers. But you're completely right. Aaron Rodgers is a fan of the league. So he watches games like we do, but he has to study these defenses like analysts do because he has to play against them, whereas we get to sit and watch them, which is fun in its own right. But he's completely right in his assessment regarding some of the talent on this defense. And this secondary has played a lot better. I was stunned as to some of the numbers that are coming out about contested or least targeted rates. Kendall Vilder, the guy that we were really high on, was the second or third most or least targeted cornerback in the entire NFL. Why? We thought that he was going to be easy, slim pickings for opposing outside receivers or even in the slot, depending on where they put him. Seems like Duke Shelley kind of found a good niche there. But honestly, over some of the talent that we've seen thus far, they really haven't picked at Kendall Vilder that much. They haven't really picked at the secondary that much. Eddie Jackson and Deshaun Gibson haven't really had that great of a season. But outside of that, this defense has consistently put up top 10 numbers throughout the season. And I don't really see that slowing down. Now, Keem Hicks' injury is a pretty big deal, especially in the run game. But we've seen Bilal Nichols. We've seen Eddie Goldman's back, which is a huge, huge, huge addition in regards to Keem Hicks being injured. It seemed like Ryan Pace kind of knew that was going to happen. He prepared the team for the eventual reality when Keem Hicks was gone with the addition of defensive tackles and nose tackles throughout the offseason. So the team has contingencies in place, which is fantastic. So if Khalil Mack doesn't dress, which I don't think there's a reason he wouldn't. He practiced, he played through the pain on Sunday, and it seems like he had time to rest, and it's really unlikely that he doesn't play on Sunday this week against the Packers. But if he doesn't, guess what? We have Travis Gibson as a contingency plan to line up across from Robert Quinn. So the great news about this Bears defense is whoever you take out, there's a next man up mentality that I think Sean Desai has instilled incredibly well. And we're seeing it in the depth. There's no way that a team has this many sacks this point in the game without having that next man up mentality. Because Khalil Mack and Robert Quinn aren't up there every snap of every down on the defense side of the ball, by the way. So if we're looking at the Bears defense and we're comparing it to the Packers offense is incredibly hot right now, but they're incredibly hot every year. Matt LaFleur is an offensive genius, but he also has probably the second best quarterback in the league right now in Aaron Rodgers, who can still fling the ball whenever, wherever. He can still move around the pocket whenever, wherever. He's still just a magician at the end of the day. So when you add a great offensive guru, you add that with Aaron Rodgers, will go down as one of the greatest of all time, and you add Devontae Adams, that's a tough opposing matchup for a defense that isn't known for its amazing secondary play. It's been good enough to get by, but is it enough to stop this Rodgers LaFleur air attack? I'm not so certain. What do you think?
Look, it's tough to say because if you watch the Bears defense this year, essentially what's happened is that the front seven has been the strength of this team, and the front seven's covered up a lot of holes in the secondary. Now, granted, I do think that there is something worth noting here is that there has been, and this was prevalent against both Detroit and Las Vegas, the Bears secondary has gotten some of its miscommunication issues hammered out. This team's not quite where it needs to be, especially with three of the four starters in the secondary returning from last season, but still, hey, it's better than nothing. Okay. And shout out to Deion Bush and DeAndre Houston Carson for stepping in and playing at a high level too, by the way. But I also think that no, it's gonna be way too much because look, we've been here before, and it's not like the Bears have never really had, and this does go back to like the Kyle Fuller days and stuff too. The Bears never really had a super scary secondary that was kind of like the Legion of Boom, where you legitimately needed to game plan for them. It was always a secondary that was much better than a lot of people expected it to be simply because of a really strong pass rush. Okay. Even when you go back to like the Lovie Smith days. Hey, I know that was a Tampa 2 defensive scheme, but you also have to keep something in mind. The Bears had really good front sevens all those years, and then one or two good defensive backs, and that was about it. Now, I'm not saying every one of your defensive backs needs to be an all pro, but there's certainly a lot of potential in this with the secondary unit. It's just going to be that they're going to start the game off playing really well. And then as the game goes on and this team gets tired, the secondary is going to begin to break and give up an explosive player too.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen the script so many times with Aaron Rodgers and the Packers. The Bears always come out pretty strong, and then by the end of the game, it's always just wheels fall off because then Aaron just kind of takes over after the half and makes his adjustments. So there's a cautious optimism to this game. Like you mentioned, the front seven have the capability to completely destroy it. But I have to give credit to where credit's due. Green Bay has had a good amount of injuries on their line. David Bakhtiari was placed on IR. They brought in their guy, Dennis Kelly from the Titans. He's questionable to play. They've had to move their line around a lot this year, but they've only allowed 11 sacks, which is pretty impressive for this kind of makeshift offensive line that they've thrown together. So if they're able to negate that front seven, there's really no argument for us as fans to go, oof, I don't know, Aaron. I think this might be your last shot here at Soldier Field. Like, I don't know. I think he might have a little too much fun with it. If the front seven do find a way, and I'm going to put this on Sean Desai because he's been able to effectively scheme out just about every player that he's wanted to since the season started. Because look back to the Browns game. That was a terrible game for the offensive side of the ball, but for 3.5 quarters of the defense side of the ball before the whole team just gave up, Nick Chubb was effectively rendered useless. Baker Mayfield was effectively rendered useless. Like that, there was no reason that they shouldn't have been able to put up as many points as they did in that up until that third quarter. That was insane until Kareem Hunt came out of nowhere, and I don't think that anyone was anticipating that to happen. And then fast forward, Darren Waller was essentially rendered useless. Josh Jacobs pounded the ball a lot. That's what happens when you hand it off the ball that much. You're going to get yards eventually. But Sean Desai's defense has shown an ability to scheme players out. So if he's able to scheme out, say, Davante Adams, because Aaron Jones is still questionable. So their main running back may be out. Davante Adams had limited practice. He's questionable, but he's most likely going to play. There's a possibility that we may see some really, really, really smart schemes that make Aaron think a little bit. If Aaron has to think a little too long, this front seven might take advantage of that offensive line.
And that's ultimately what you want. We also have to keep something in mind is just watching Aaron Rodgers over the last couple of years is that this isn't just against the Bears, but it's a theme when he's playing any strong pass rush. He's going to get the ball out quickly. And what are the Packers going to do? Well, they're going to start calling plays, and I'm not saying they're going to completely ditch the explosive plays and the deep passing game, but what they are going to do is they're going to go ahead and they're just going to make Aaron Rodgers a pocket passer. They're going to say, hey, get the ball out super quickly because that's what Aaron Rodgers is just really good at, and that's the way he's had his best games against the Bears over the last couple of years. And then it's just going to be these short and intermediate routes, all right, with the yards after catch really being a point of emphasis. And so one of the things the Bears need to do on the defensive side of the ball is just do not let up at all. Okay, that means that if you see a guy that's got the ball, you know what, you bring him down no matter what the case is. All right, for the Bears, coverage wise, zone coverage against Green Bay unfortunately is not going to work. Zone coverage is basically shooting yourself in the foot because you are asking Aaron Rodgers to take all the time he needs in the world to find an open receiver. With zone coverage, what's going to happen is the moment you pass off one guy to the next, you know Aaron's going to catch on and take advantage of it. So ultimately, it's just going to be have to be super sticky man coverage. Also, this needs to be a game where there's a lot of cover one looks. All right, but also if you need to, you go ahead and you ditch the nickel defense and play the 9 defense because you are going to need an extra defensive back at all times to shadow Davante Adams.
Yeah, absolutely. That's huge. Aaron kind of made his reputation on being a cover 2 killer back when cover 2 was incredibly popular. So he has a fantastic ability to read zone defenses and just pick them apart. The only problem there is Davante Adams is a man beater. He loves playing man defense, and every team throws their best talented corner on him and says, press him as much as you can, and nothing really changes much. But if you leave the single safety high up there, Aaron's going to take advantage of that every second. He's going to recognize that. He's going to notice it, and he's going to wait for that deep ball. But we also know that LaFleur loves his crossers. We know LaFleur loves his post routes. So, I mean, there's a lot. If you mitigate the run game, I think if the Bears, and they have a really good run defense this year, if they're able to shut down the Packers' run game effectively, that really closes a lot of doors for this offense, because they really do rely on this run game to activate the play action. What happened to the Buccaneers? They gave up in the NFC Championship game. They gave up on the running game, and they relied on, Aaron Rodgers. Matt LaFleur didn't trust Aaron Rodgers all the way, even though I think he still could have won that game. But the Buccaneers came out with a win. Why? Because they're able to completely mitigate that rushing attack. So if the Bears are able to do the same, we might walk away with a good victory. But how big a game is this for Jalen Johnson?
Yeah, it is this major. Well, it's a big game, and here's why. Because Jalen Johnson, according to Pro Football Focus, is one of the top 5 cornerbacks in the NFL. But then you also factor this in. It's not hard to see. I mean, Jalen Johnson, I think a lot of people tend to forget, is that he slipped in the second round because of the shoulder injury. And in a 2020 redraft, he certainly would be the first or second cornerback off the board. But it's big for him because he said this today in press conferences. He's like, hey, I want to follow and shadow the best receiver on the field every single game. Well, guess what? Your best one in this game is Davante Adams. Davante's had his fair share with the Bears, all right? And Davante Adams being a much bigger wide receiver, I think Jalen Johnson's going to have a really fair shot to shut him down, to the point where Aaron's not even going to target Adams, knowing that Johnson's pretty much right there. I think that Jalen Johnson this year, you talk about where he's going, where it's been in coverage, right? Man coverage mostly. It's been in instincts, all right? He's just playing so much smarter. His eyes are always on the football. So Jalen Johnson has a big prove-it game against Green Bay this weekend. And if he continues to rise the way he has the first 5 weeks of the season, there's no doubt in my mind that Johnson could be in conversation for being a top 10 cornerback in the NFL soon.
Yeah, absolutely. If there's any opportunity that you can shut down one of the best, if not the best wide receiver in the NFL, it's definitely going to make some media attention down the line. Plus, he may have the added advantage of a little banged up Davante Adams. He's still limited at practice, like I said earlier. So who knows, come games time, he may have a little lingering issue there that Jalen Johnson can kind of run with. Now, let's flip the script. Let's go Justin Fields talk. Let's talk about Fields in his first game against the Packers. Just about 50 minutes before recording this episode, Halas Hall announced that they placed Damien Williams on COVID-19 IR list, so he's most likely, if not indefinitely, out against the Packers. That leaves the rushing game without David Montgomery and without Damien Williams. So it's just going to be Khalil Herbert, Ryan Nall, and Artavis Pierce. What are your initial thoughts on that?
Please hand the ball up to Herbert 10 bajillion times, and that's going to be the end of it, all right? You can mix in a carry or two for Artavis Pierce there, but Ryan Nall should absolutely not be a fullback. We discussed this on Monday. I don't have anything against Ryan Nall. He can be fine as a fullback, but he just really hasn't shown that he's a tough, hard, and instinctive runner with any sort of burst that's going to allow him to finish off big plays. Okay, you look at this running back room. It is still one of the strongest positional groups on the roster, thanks to Khalil Herbert and the potential that he's flashed. It's certainly got a lot of high upside. So you have Pierce and Artavis. We have Pierce and Khalil Herbert that have an incredible amount of upside, and then there's Ryan Nall that's just lingering in the background. But yeah, I'm excited to see what these running backs can do, since the Bears' philosophy is run heavy.
Yeah, and I think that if you take out Damien Williams and you need that kind of gadget speed, rely on your sub 4.4 quarterback to make that opportunity. Obviously, we don't want to put him in a situation where he can get hurt, but you have to take advantage of his speed in opening up this run game. Now, in regards to the passing game, we've seen so far that Justin Fields has the highest aggressiveness rating in the NFL, which means he targets receivers more often than other quarterbacks that have less than a yard of separation. We've also seen that he has the most deep ball throw percentage in the country. And we're also seeing he has a top 5 accuracy in regards to those deep balls. So every metric is suggesting that Justin Fields is an elite deep ball thrower, but we haven't seen it yet. We've seen a couple flashes here and there, but we haven't seen the offense rely consistently on Justin's ability to absolutely throw dimes, 30 plus yards, 20 plus yards. Looking at the Packers injury list, Jair Alexander was placed on IR. He's basically done for the season. Kevin Keem did not practice the past 2 days. He's an incredibly doubtful option for this Sunday. That means that the Packers have lost their 2 most consistent veteran cornerbacks. Now, they do have a solid rookie talent at the corner, but that means that there's a gaping hole in this Packers secondary. If there's a game for Justin to open it up, considering DMO is gone, considering Damien's gone, to really solidify himself as that deep ball passer and put up his first game with gaudy numbers of the year. Could you imagine if it was against the Packers? Like, how big of a statement would that be to the NFL? If he comes out and says, yeah, league's oldest rivalry, the comment about, oh, how does it feel about being the Michigan of the Ohio State Michigan rivalry, completely didn't even acknowledge it. He comes out and puts up ridiculous numbers. You think that could happen? I mean, possibly, it could obviously happen, but realistically, are you anticipating that?
Yeah, I would love to see it happen, but at the end of the day, I'm also super realistic, and I know that
Sure.
the way things go for the Packers every single year is they seemingly will play the Bears, and then the positional group or unit that was just absolute tragedy ends up turning into a strength and finding its rhythm down the stretch. And I'm referring to the Green Bay defense there. But look, Green Bay being out Jair Alexander and Kevin King is big, okay? Because you're talking about 2 former first round picks here. I also think that Jair Alexander being out for the next couple of weeks is concerning because there's a chance he does undergo season-ending shoulder surgery. Packers seemingly haven't decided on that. But it's still big because what you're doing is you're taking away arguably one of the top man cover cornerbacks in the game. And then all of a sudden, as a defense, you're going to be forced to change up every single play because you know that some of the plays come with man-to-man coverage. The ones, and usually you would call those with Jair Alexander in the game. Some of them just come with zone coverage. And if you can't do that, then you probably are going to get picked apart because you're going to be beaten deep by the Bears every time.
Yeah, this could be a huge game for that Darnell Mooney connection because Darnell might have the most speed. A-Rob might not play, but Darnell will most definitely have the most speed at that position as wide receiver, and we've already seen the connection between the two. So there's a lot of like, again, like I've said at the beginning, cautious optimism that the Bears can run away with this game on the offensive side of the ball if there is an effective scheme and game plan, which is something that we haven't seen maybe in a while. Maybe we saw that with the Raiders because they were introducing new jumbo sets and new run packages that worked. So who knows? Maybe we see a completely new system this Sunday against the Packers to try to take advantage of some of their injuries. Now, just like going straight off statistics, we're almost about to wrap it up here, and then we'll jump into our score previews. The Bears and Packers are essentially neck and neck for about every defensive statistic in the league this year. So both defenses have been playing incredibly well. The one thing that really interests me thus far, however, is takeaways. Now, the Green Bay Packers actually have one more takeaway than the Bears do. They have 5 interceptions and 3 fumbles, whereas the Bears have 4 interceptions and 3 fumbles. The Packers have let up 3 interceptions and 2 fumbles this year, whereas the Bears have let up 3 interceptions and 1 fumble this year. A lot of people on Twitter, a lot of people around the league are saying that if the Bears are going to win this game, they have to generate turnovers. What are you? Is that? I don't know. Like I think that's going to be tough against Aaron Rodgers. One, because he doesn't really throw that many picks, but he's thrown 3 so far this year, which is a little uncharacteristic for him. I think this is a big game for Jalen Johnson. I think this is a big game for Justin Fields. I think this is a big game for the future of the Chicago Bears franchise and kind of sweeping the Packers into the dustbin of history. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it definitely is going to be a point of emphasis. I mean, you look at the offseason, everything that we heard and saw coming out of Hallows Hall was that the Bears are trying to become more dominant on defense and they want to force more takeaways and create more turnovers. That's essentially what's going on. I mean, what better way to do it against a future Hall of Fame quarterback, a guy who, when he retires, is going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer? I mean, the numbers are somewhat deceiving. because if you look into the numbers too much, you're going to be taking things out of context. If you look in them too little, well, you're still taking things out of context, right? And it's very easy. I think people have to understand something to go back and basically cherry pick a throw here and there, interception here and there, especially with NFL Game Pass and screenshotting stuff. But ultimately, getting back to your question, I mean, the Bears are going to need to go ahead and force at least 2 turnovers in this game and really give the offense a chance.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that means that Justin Fields has to continue his one-game streak of not throwing any interceptions. And that comes down to Khalil Herbert holding onto that ball. That comes down to Artavis Pierce holding onto that ball. And whoever steps up in this game. This is a huge game for the youth, right? This is, I think, the storyline that we should be looking at throughout this game and in the weeks to come is a lot of the older guys are banged up, but the younger guys have been playing incredibly well on both sides of the ball. This is an opportunity to look at the team that have been bullying us for the past 2 decades and say, no more, we run this now. We are, again, the monsters of the Midway and the king of the North. So this is a big storyline. This is a huge game. This is a really big week. I'm going to go out here. I've been really pessimistic about the Bears. I don't want to jinx anything because every time I say we're going to lose, we end up winning. Suns, the Browns. I think there's a good opportunity that the Bears win this game. Again, I'm cautiously optimistic. But at the end of the day, I think this might be a pretty handed victory. I'm going 10-21.
All right, so I predicted this on Tuesday night on our weekly show, which is on every single podcasting platform. Go check it out. But I'm going to say the Packers end up winning 31-27. The Bears do keep it close, but it's like I mentioned, towards the end of the game, the Bears secondary and defense starts to break down as a result of a second half that's just filled with miscommunications all over the place, as well as missed assignments and lack of gap integrity. So I'm going to say Packers 31, Bears 27.
Yeah, that's pretty realistic. So hopefully that doesn't happen, but that seems to be what happens every time we play the Packers. So, all right, cool. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you share this video if you liked it. Some Bears fans. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Tweet at us if you're upset about something we said or you like something that we said, or just follow us for information, memes, all that jazz on Twitter. My handle's right there. There we go. Usayd is right there. And thank you guys so much for being a part of the Fireside Bears family. And of course, bear down.